The rain lashed against the panoramic windows of the penthouse suite, each drop a drumbeat against the tense silence. Sarah Jensen clutched the delicate stem of her champagne flute, the sparkling liquid a bitter contrast to the turmoil swirling inside her. Across the opulent room, amidst the low hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses, she saw him 5 years. 5 years since she'd last seen the face that haunted her dreams and fueled her deepest regrets. David Chen. The man she'd loved with a fierce, consuming passion. The man she'd married in a whirlwind of shared promises under the California sun. The man whose departure had shattered her world, leaving her with a secret, a precious, fragile secret that breathed life into her every day. He looked different harder. The boyish charm had been replaced by a sharp, commanding presence. He moved with an easy confidence that spoke of power and success, a stark contrast to the struggling artist she'd known. And then she saw her tall, striking woman, with a predatory smile, her hand resting possessively on David's arm. Sarah's heart, already a fragile thing, gave a painful lurch. It wasn't just the 5 years that had passed the separate lives they'd built, the unspoken pain that lingered between them. It was the undeniable evidence that he had moved on, replaced her, while a part of her remained tethered to their shared past, to the life that could have been. Their eyes met across the crowded room. For a fleeting second, the mask of indifference he wore seemed to crack, revealing a flicker of something. Surprise, recognition. Or perhaps just a trick of the light, a cruel play of shadows in the dimly lit room. He quickly averted his gaze, his expression hardening once more, as the woman beside him leaned in, whispering something that made him smile. A genuine smile. A smile that Sarah hadn't seen directed at her in far too long. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through Sarah's carefully constructed composure. She needed to leave now, before the memories overwhelmed her, before the pain became too much to bear. But as she turned to make her escape, a voice smooth and dripping with faux concern stopped her. Well, if it isn't Sarah Jensen. It's been a while, Ethan Black. The man she was currently pretending to be involved with a strategic alliance, born out of desperation, and the need for protection against a world that had suddenly become far more dangerous. He was charming, ruthless, and currently serving his own agenda by making a very public display of their relationship. Just moments before, he had deliberately pulled her onto his lap, in full view of the partygoers, a move calculated to provoke a reaction, though from whom Sarah wasn't entirely sure. Sarah managed her voice, betraying none of the turmoil inside Lovely Party. Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Indeed, though some guests seem more nostalgic than others, his gaze flickered towards David. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. 5 years ago, David and Sarah had been inseparable. Their love story was the stuff of fairy tales, a whirlwind romance culminating in a spontaneous beach wedding just 3 months before their abrupt and painful separation. The reasons were complex, a tangled mess of ambition, misunderstanding, and a secret that Sarah, in her youthful pride, couldn't bring herself to share. Now reunited in a setting that felt both surreal and cruel. The weight of their history pressed down on them. David, witnessing Sarah with Ethan, felt a surge of something he couldn't quite name. Anger, jealousy, a wounded pride that still smarted after all this time. He remembered the proposal on that sun-drenched beach, the joy in her eyes, the promise of a future that had evaporated into thin air. Seeing her now seemingly happy and entwined with another man felt like a betrayal of that memory. He watched as Ethan's arm tightened around Sarah's waist, a possessive gesture that grated on David's nerves. He remembered the feel of her in his arms, the way she fit against him perfectly. The memory was a physical ache. Later that evening, away from the prying eyes of the party, David confronted Sarah. The words exchanged were sharp-laced with years of unspoken accusations and lingering resentment. 5 years, Sarah and you haven't changed a bit. David sneered, his voice low and cutting. Still chasing after men with money, are we? Don't tell me you've actually fallen for his act. Sarah flinched as if struck. The unfairness of his words stung, burning away the last vestiges of her composure. You have no idea, David, she retorted, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. You left. You walked away. What right do you have to judge me? The right of someone you lied to. He shot back, the old wound still raw. Don't pretend you're some innocent victim here. You walked away from our marriage from me. And you think it was easy. Sarah's voice cracked. You think I didn't have my reasons. Their argument was a dance of pain and accusation, each word a jab of parry. David accused her of abandoning their marriage, of being mercenary. Sarah, unable to reveal the true heartbreaking reason for her departure, could only defend herself with veiled references to his ambition and her need for independence. The truth, the life-altering truth that connected them in a way he couldn't possibly imagine, remained locked away, a heavy burden she carried alone. The conversation ended, as it always did, with unresolved anger and a deeper chasm between them. David left, convinced of her duplicity, his heart heavy with a mixture of bitterness and a perplexing, persistent concern that he refused to acknowledge. Watching his retreating back, Sarah's eyes welled up with tears. Did he really hate her that much? After everything, the sacrifices she'd made, the lonely nights, the fear she'd lived with for 5 years, it all felt so pointless now. She reached for her phone, dialing a number she knew by heart. Ethan, she said, her voice barely a whisper. We need to talk. It's about Michael. Her son, the product of their love. The living embodiment of the future. They had lost Michael, who was facing a daunting heart surgery, a procedure that required the expertise of a renowned cardiac surgeon, a surgeon who, coincidentally, was Ethan Black's father-in-law. Sarah's arrangement with Ethan, their public charade of a relationship, was a desperate gamble, a Faustian bargain struck to secure the best possible care for her son. Ethan, locked in a fierce rivalry with David in the business world, was more than willing to play along, using Sarah as a pawn in his own game to undermine David's reputation, especially within the elite circles gathered at the party. Sarah knew she was being used, knew that Ethan's intentions were far from noble, but for Michael, she would do anything. His life was on the line, and nothing else mattered. The revelation hit David like a physical blow. Michael. His Michael, the vibrant, curly-haired boy, with Sarah's eyes and a mischievous grin that mirrored his own. The realization washed over him, a tidal wave of shock, regret, and an overwhelming surge of paternal love he hadn't known he was capable of. 5 years. 5 years of Michael's life. He had missed 5 years. Sarah had shouldered the burden of raising their son alone, while he had been consumed by bitterness and ambition. The unfairness of his past accusations, the harsh words he'd thrown at Sarah at the party, now twisted in his gut like a knife. He had to make it right. He had to be a father to Michael, a partner to Sarah. The anger he'd harbored for 5 years evaporated, replaced by a fierce determination to protect and provide for the family he hadn't known he had. He wasted no time. He reached out to Sarah, not with demands or accusations, but with a vulnerability that surprised even himself. He confessed his ignorance, his regret, his desperate wish to be a part of Michael's life. Sarah, wary and hurt by his past behavior, was hesitant. The years of solo parenting, the emotional toll of his absence, the constant fear for Michael's health, it had built walls around her heart. She had learned to rely only on herself to shield Michael from any potential pain, and inviting David back into their lives felt like a terrifying risk. But seeing the raw sincerity in his eyes, the genuine remorse that softened the hard edges, he developed a flicker of hope ignited within her. For Michael's sake, she decided to try. The transition was far from smooth. David, used to the solitary, ordered existence of a successful businessman, found himself navigating the chaotic, unpredictable world of a single mother and a young child. Their small apartment, a far cry from his spacious, minimalist penthouse, was filled with the joyful clutter of childhood. Toys scattered on the floor, crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator, the constant soundtrack of Michael's laughter and chatter. He moved in tentatively, at first bringing with him an eagerness to learn to help, to simply be there. Sarah watched him, a mixture of apprehension and reluctant hope. Old habits died hard. The years of resentment and misunderstanding didn't simply disappear overnight. There were arguments, small clashes, born of different parenting styles, different routines, different ways of looking at the world. David, used to being in control, had to learn to relinquish it to follow Sarah's lead when it came to Michael. Sarah, fiercely independent, had to learn to lean on him to trust him with the most precious part of her life. But amidst the awkwardness and the lingering shadows of the past, there was Michael, their son, oblivious to the complexities of their history, simply delighted in having his parents together. He reveled in David's attention, the playful wrestling matches, the bedtime stories, the simple presence of a father figure he had only dreamed of, Michael's unconditional love. His innocent joy became the bridge that slowly, tentatively, began to close the gap between Sarah and David. They learned to co-parent a messy, imperfect process of trial and error. David, initially clumsy and unsure, quickly adapted, his natural intelligence and determination kicking in. He researched Michael's heart condition, spoke to doctors, learned to prepare his special meals, and navigate the Fuzada world of pediatric cardiology. Sarah, watching him, felt a grudging respect blossom into something warmer, something akin to the feelings she had buried deep within her heart. They found a rhythm, a shared purpose in raising Michael, and in the process, they began to see glimpses of the people they had once been, the people who had fallen so deeply in love. The shared laughter during Michael's bath time, the quiet conversations after he had fallen asleep, the stolen glances that held a hint of the old spark. It was a slow, fragile rekindling of a fire that had never truly gone out. Just as they were finding their footing, a new threat emerged, one that struck at the heart of Sarah's professional life. Ethan Black, having acquired a controlling stake in the company where Sarah was a rising star, began to consolidate his power. And he made it clear that he intended to use his position to make Sarah's life difficult. The very man whose father-in-law Sarah had courted for Michael's surgery was now her professional adversary. Ethan, still smarting from his failed attempts to publicly humiliate David, and driven by a vindictive desire for control, targeted Sarah and her team. He threatened layoffs, stalled crucial projects, and spread rumors, creating an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty within the company. Sarah, fiercely protective of her team, the people who had supported her and believed in her when no one else did, found herself in a desperate battle to save their jobs, and the groundbreaking AI heart modeling project she had poured her life into. David, now firmly back in Sarah's corner, watched the unfolding situation with a cold fury. He saw Ethan's actions for what they were: a petty, vindictive attack aimed at hurting Sarah, and by extension him. He wouldn't stand by and watch her suffer. He leveraged his own considerable influence and resources working behind the scenes to counter Ethan's moves. He consulted with lawyers, reached out to his contacts in the business world, and quietly gathered information on Ethan's vulnerabilities. The office became a battleground, Sarah, drawing strength from David's support and the unwavering loyalty of her team, fought back. She publicly challenged Ethan's decisions, rallied her colleagues, and worked tirelessly to demonstrate the value of her project. Her lead developer, a sharp and loyal woman named Maria, and the rest of her team stood by her side, refusing to be intimidated by Ethan's tactics. They worked late nights, brainstormed strategies, and supported each other through the escalating tension. One particularly tense week, Ethan orchestrated a series of audits and performance reviews clearly designed to find fault with Sarah's team and provide justification for layoffs. The pressure was immense. Sarah and her team worked around the clock, preparing documentation, analyzing data, and anticipating every possible angle of attack. David, seeing Sarah's exhaustion and the strain on her team, stepped in, providing not only emotional support, but also practical assistance. He sent in a team of consultants to help them navigate the audit, offering legal advice and strategic guidance. The situation came to a head during a heated board meeting. Ethan, confident in his position, presented a case for restructuring, which would effectively dismantle Sarah's team and sideline her project. Sarah, armed with irrefutable data and a passionate defense of her work, countered his arguments point by point. The meeting was a tense back and forth, a test of wills, and a battle for the future of the company. Just as the outcome seemed uncertain, a piece of crucial information surfaced thanks to David's investigation into Ethan's past dealings. It was evidence of unethical business practices, a clear violation of corporate regulations, and a potential scandal that could cripple Ethan's career. David, through a trusted intermediary, ensured the information reached the right hands at the right time. Despite the lingering challenges and the shadows of the past, a profound connection blossomed between Sarah and David, nurtured by their shared love for Michael and the trials they had overcome together. The tentative hope that had flickered between them ignited into a steady flame. One evening, under a sky dusted with stars, David took Sarah's hand. His voice, though tinged with emotion, was firm with conviction. "Sarah, he began these past few months, seeing you with Michael, building this life together. It's everything I never knew I needed." He paused, searching her eyes. "I know we have a complicated history, and I messed up more than I can ever apologize for. But I love you, Sarah. I love you, and I love Michael. And I don't want to waste another moment." He knelt, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside, a single exquisite diamond ring shimmered. "Sarah Jensen, will you marry me? Will you give me the chance to be the husband and father we were always meant to be?" Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, blurring the outline of his face. This was the moment she had secretly longed for, the redemption of a love story she had thought was lost forever. "Yes, David," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you." Their joy was momentarily overshadowed by a stark reality. David's heart condition, a silent threat that had always been a part of his life, worsened. He needed surgery, a complex procedure that would require him to travel abroad to seek the expertise of a specialist. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped Sarah's heart. She had already faced the possibility of losing him once, and the thought of it happening again was almost unbearable. But this time was different. They faced it together. Sarah was his rock, her unwavering support and quiet strength, giving him the courage he needed. She accompanied him, staying by his side throughout the daunting process, her presence a constant source of comfort. The surgery was a success. After weeks of anxious waiting and recovery, David returned healthier and more determined than ever to embrace the future with his family. They didn't wait. With Michael proudly standing beside them as the ring-bearer, Sarah and David exchanged vows in a simple, heartfelt ceremony. It wasn't the grand wedding they might have once envisioned, but it was perfect, a celebration of their resilience, their love, and the beautiful family they had built against all odds. Life wasn't without its challenges, but they faced them as a team. David fully embraced his role as a father, his bond with Michael deepening with every shared adventure. Sarah thrived both personally and professionally, her passion for her work reignited by the stability and happiness she had found in her family life. 2 years later, their family grew, a baby boy, with David's dark hair and Sarah's infectious laugh joined their little unit, Michael. The older brother doted on the new addition, his heart full of love for his sibling. Their home, once a place of quiet solitude for Sarah and Michael, was now filled with the joyful sounds of a complete family. Laughter echoed through the rooms, toy cars cluttered the floor, and the scent of home-cooked meals filled the air. Sarah and David, hand in hand, would often watch their two boys playing, their hearts overflowing with gratitude for the second chance they had been given. The past, with its pain and misunderstandings, had shaped them, but it no longer defined them. They had found their way back to each other, building a future brighter and stronger than they could have ever imagined. Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the content, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more updates. Don't forget to share it with your friends too. Let's spread the word together. Thanks for the support.